Today we're going to talk about cascading your business operating system down, right? And so, first thing is, I think whenever you're talking about cascading it down, you got to talk about why in the heck people even enter into upgrading the operating system, because it's not an easy thing to do, right? It takes, typically, somewhere between 15 and 24 months, and that's a long time for people. Everybody loves to just get stuff done quickly, but the reality is that it takes time for people to basically understand the concepts and the tools and the disciplines associated with the system. It takes time for people to master these concepts and tools and disciplines, because you don't want to teach them to get the sort of the next level down of the organization until you've got your arms around mastery. And then after that, the next layer masters it and then rolls it down further. So, typically most organizations, especially SMBs, they have department leaders, and then the departments have a bunch of team leaders, and then each of the team leaders has a bunch of individual contributors to report to them. So you got these three layers that you got to roll the thing down toward. But what people need to recognize is they're upgrading their operating system because they're frustrated, right? As we've talked about before. No one wants to build a company they end up sort of not liking, right? Ultimately what you want to build is a company that just genuinely love, and I would love for founders, CEOs to build companies they'd love forever, which just means that they really do care about the long-term best interest of the organization, the people, all of the ideal stakeholders, the employees, the customers, their vendors, strategic partners, of course, the shareholders. And so it's just there's a reason they enter into it. They're entering into the upgrade because they're getting frustrated with things, because the reality is there are a lot of things that happen within a company, right? There's goals, and there's recruiting, and there's people issues, there's processes, there's metrics you need to measure, and it could be all a bit overwhelming. As Gino Wickman of EOS would say, there are 136 issues, but if you sort of organize things into various competencies, you can make it much simpler. EOS has the 6 key components. At 90, we talk about the 9 core competencies, but becoming strong across those things, and so that you can start to minimize the unnecessary people issues. You can really make sure everybody's on the same page with regard to who you are, where you're going, what matters, and things like that. And so the reality is, that whole exercise, that whole effort around upgrading your operating system, it has to start with, first of all, it has to start with the founder / CEO. They've got to believe this is a thing that's worth spending a lot of time on with the rest of their senior leadership team. And if they're bought into the need to upgrade the operating system, and then you get the whole senior leadership team involved, and really what they do in the first phase is just get all on the same page in terms of what matters, who are our ideal customers, why do we exist, how do we make the world a better place? We call that the purpose, passion, just cause. What are the core values, what are the behaviors that are really important for us to feel like we're working with people we love working with? And so you get the sort of what we call the vision stuff all agreed to. And then you start setting plans, right? So you got the vision, then you got strategy, and then you got tactics. And so vision is vision, strategy is plans, right? And then ultimately you get to the tactics. So the plans are, where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 3 years? What's it look like? So that you can get everybody excited about the journey from here to there. Where are we going to be in one short year? And then what are we going to do the next 90 days to sort of turn our 1 year plans into reality, turn our 3 year picture into reality, and turn our big, hairy, audacious goals 10 years from now into reality? And so you get everybody on the same page in terms of that stuff. And then you also, then start saying, how do we make this happen? Getting to tactics, it's, we need to have weekly meetings. We need to have quarterly planning sessions. We need to have annual planning sessions. And so you start working on what I call these core concepts, tools, and disciplines at the senior leadership team level. And then at some point, people are going to be wondering what the heck you're doing. And I think that's partially why EOS calls the book, What the Heck is EOS? They're going to what are you guys doing? What are you meeting on? What are you talking about? And so at some point you have to let the rest of the organization know that you're upgrading your operating system. Some organizations, some leaders are, they'll go into it thinking, I think this makes sense, but they're not 100% committed. So those guys and gals aren't going to want to talk about what's going on yet. They're going to want to make sure that they're comfortable with the journey they're embarking on, and that's fine, right? My preference is early on, you just let people know you're looking at upgrading your operating system. You're going to be having meetings, all-day meetings with your direct reports. You can say we're looking at this thing called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or they're looking at 9DOS, or they're looking at Pinnacle or Empire or one of these other BOSs that are out there, and scaling up, eMyth, right? There's lots of them. And just say, hey, we're looking into this because we think it'll help us grow better. We think it'll help us be more focused at all levels. It'll help us align better. And if we're focused and aligned and we actually are all doing work that we genuinely enjoy doing, we'll all be thriving. And so that's a much better place than we are right now, because we're struggling a little bit here and there. And so just let people know that's going on. And then once you get through sort of the first phase, which is agreeing on the vision stuff, agreeing on the plan stuff, agreeing on the structure of the organization, and agreeing on sort of the definition of things that are kind of important, like what are the core processes that we as a company need to be really good at. Once you've gone through that phase one, you can then share what you've agreed to with the rest of the organization. That's what I always encourage. And so that's a formal meeting, and it's called rolling out. I think EOS calls it rolling out as an example. And you share your vision, you share your core values, you share your ideal clients, you share your unique value proposition, so everybody understands sort of what's important in terms of what you're selling to your customers, because you're kind of, whatever you tell them you're selling them, you kind of want to deliver on that. And so you roll it out, and then you let them know. And then what happens is you start to take some of these concepts and tools and disciplines, like the weekly meeting, the quarterly planning session, the annual planning session, and you roll that down to the next level. So department leaders now will roll that down to their team leaders within the departments. And that could mean that they all now have a 1-year plan for a department, plus the 90-day rocks. They're all doing weekly meetings, depending upon the nature of the organization and each of the departments. They may be doing weekly one-on-one meetings. I'm a huge believer in weekly one-on-ones. I like staying connected with my people, and I know our team loves staying connected with their people, our department leaders. And then you roll down KPIs, and so now you have company scorecards, a department scorecard, and then you have a team. You roll down to eventually getting a team scorecard. So there's this process of just sort of cascading down the concepts, tools, and disciplines throughout the organization, and it just takes time. And one of the questions that people ask me is, well, what happens if you don't roll it down? Well, if you don't roll it down, then all of a sudden, you're speaking one language at the senior leadership level, but people are speaking a different language at the departments levels and different language at the team level. People think certain things are more important than other things, and so ultimately, I'm really surprised that most people, and I say this statistically speaking, we know it because we got 10,000 plus companies running on 90. I'm surprised that most organizations don't cascade the upgrade all the way down. They don't get KPIs all the way down to every single seat. They don't have quarterly conversations taking place with every single person. They don't have weekly meetings taking place with every single for every single team. And the reality is that just makes it more difficult for everybody to feel like they're on the same page, back to focus, aligned, and thriving. So I'm not quite sure why people don't cascade, the BOS upgrade all the way down. I've thought a lot about it. We should probably do some research on it. But I think sometimes people are concerned that it's going to expose some weaknesses, maybe. It could be a process weakness. It could be some people issues. Maybe someone doesn't want to talk about the fact that, someone they really, really like is just not competent, or they're not a good core value fit, or they're really not committed to doing their job particularly well. I think sometimes it's just, they've done it at their level, and it's sort of like, okay, we're done, rather than, hey, let's take it to the next level, and then take it to all edges of the organization. But it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, some people are resistant to change on that in terms of running things a new way and tracking things. And, some people on the KPI end may feel like that's an invasion of privacy almost on certain things.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
But it's mostly like a post-rationalization about why they are uncomfortable with something new on that. And like you said, it could be a bunch of different reasons. But, it's up to the leaders to sort of figure out exactly where the value is coming from in terms of keeping everybody aligned from top to bottom. Because if you start to, isolate your BOS and everything on the top end, the further and further you get away from that, the more discontinuity there is, and that's just going to create basically an echo chamber up top and on the bottom with middle level sort of
with different noise or communication or whatever you want to say, right? In terms of that echo chamber.
Yeah, you sort of have like an airlock in the middle of, nothing's really going through there.
Yeah.
And but obviously you have to start at the top and it gradually grow as everyone masters, from top down to bottom.
Yeah.
And once you get everybody in that circle of understanding and eventually mastery, that's where you really start to shine, and that's where you get full accountability and really make everybody strong. Because once you adopt these things, it's great for the whole company, but it is difficult. You are entering into something that's sort of unknown, something that's kind of uncomfortable, and you just got to keep with it, get those repetitions in and make it work.
Yeah, it's interesting if you think about it. I think that like the scorecard and the KPIs, I hear about this all the time, right? Like you said earlier, KPIs for some people, it feels like, well, why are they, why do I have 3 to 5 KPIs, and don't they trust me to do my job? And my perspective is, no, the goal here is to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of like what's important, right? Whether it's a quality thing or a quantity thing, or it's following a process, thinking, about individual contributors, right? At that level, following a process, and then, showing up and doing good work, right? How do we know that that's all going on? Because if we know everything's good and going well, right, there's no need for micromanaging, and no one likes to micromanage, right? Managers don't like to micromanage. Team members don't want to be micromanaged. And so it's like, we've talked about before, explicit, coherent, and resonant. Let's get explicit about what's really important. Let's talk about the 3, 4, 5 KPIs that matter for your particular seat. Let's agree on targets that help us know whether there's an issue, not targets that are like goal oriented and like they're hard to reach and they're stretched KPIs or whatever. It's not about, managing for performance. It's about managing to make sure that everything's okay. And if there are issues, for us to be on the same page, yeah, there's probably an issue going on here, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, and that's indicator, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason, that's the word we use.
Yeah.
Because it's just giving us sort of concrete and consistent insights on certain things, and you could handle those really well and make them really well thought out, or it's just something that just lets hey, this is going on. But there's different levels to that, but it is sort of just the simple way of making sure that everyone's on the same page and speaking the same language, because that matters.
Yeah. And then if you're company head, you have, let's say, 15 plus or minus KPIs, and if everything's green, right, it's easy like to go on vacation. It's easy to not micromanage. It's easy to let people run and do things their way, because we're all extraordinarily unique. The way I'm going to want to solve a problem is going to be a bit different than the way you're going to want to solve a problem. And so don't tell someone how to do their work. Just tell them get on the same page in terms of what's important, and then let them go do that thing to the best of their ability. And ultimately you want that right basic approach to getting work done to be throughout the company. And then if you don't cascade this stuff down, then then you're also, it's weird because, how do you stay connected so that people know that you're there, you're supporting them, you see their performance, you see how they're doing, you can express appreciation for it. And, for the life of me, I don't understand how people can't do quarterly conversations, right? And just talk about how we're doing. How am I doing? How are you doing in terms of, exhibiting our core values? How are you doing in terms of your roles and responsibilities, right? Recognizing the accomplishments you've had over the quarter, talking about the things that you're working on developmentally, and then how am I doing as a leader, and how am I doing as a coach and helping you develop? I mean, to not have those conversations on a quarterly basis seems like it's just weird. I don't see how in today's day and age you cannot just check in every quarter and say how are things are going, and you cannot, and you avoid having a conversation around where do you want to be in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, and how can I help you focus, align, and thrive. And so, and you can't do that without cascading, the system down. But that's me. I kind of, believe in this thing. So what do you think about all that?
I mean, I think quarterly conversations in, the essence of that is hugely important, that you have a regular interval to have those conversations about how I'm feeling, about leadership I'm feeling as an employee and as a person, and sort of asking for constructive feedback and on both ends, right? Because it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And you, as a leader especially, you don't want to get in a position where something weird is happening that you're not aware of down below.
Right.
That you don't want that to just come up and and just be a flood of chaos at the wrong time.
Right.
That's just, no one enjoys that. So it's and having it structured in a way where it is, we're gonna have very honest and forward conversation right now, and that's cool. And you have a whole structure around it, so everyone knows exactly what to expect going into it.
Right.
There's no surprise, there's no gotchas. It's very structured. Everything's there.
Yeah.
And obviously, in order to do that, it has to be cascaded. So the rest of the system has to be in place so that you can leverage that ability, which is hugely important.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when you think about when things go sideways or worse, right? When you sort of run into a crisis or just there's just like a bad moment, all of a sudden it's like not only do you deal with the bad moment, but a lot of times now all the other stuff that's boiling down below that no one's been talking about like bubbles up. And so it's not just the moment you're dealing with. Now you're dealing with the moment and all the moments you haven't dealt with. And this is why, I've said this now since I think 1989, that I think annual reviews are just crazy, because you're going to wait a whole year to talk about how I did. We're going to wait a whole year to talk about how we're doing. And the truth is that you won't remember anything from Q1 or Q2 or Q3. And the truth is that, you're probably not even going to remember a lot of the stuff from the most recent quarter, right? And so, and so to tell someone something, a year after or 9 months after something happened, and to bring that up and say, well, because of that, and then you tie in, I'm a huge, I'm not a big believer in sort of, individual incentive programs, but then to tell someone that, hey, by the way, you're going to get a crappy bonus or something like that because of something that happened 9 months ago. It's just like, really? That's how we do things around here? And then, of course, when those conversations are taking place, now we've got unwanted, avoidable turnover because people are like, heck with this. Like, I think there's better ways to build and work and be a part of something.
Yeah, it's just like how efficient are you trying to run the system? And you need to, it's like our brains are updating the framework constantly.
Right.
And it's there's obviously a spectrum there. a year, that's way too long.
Right.
And then, hopefully we have weekly meetings and you can sort of talk through the day-to-day stuff, but you don't need to go into the big picture there. And so, 90 days is a decent balance between everything in terms of both your goals and also having those conversations, having those check-ins.
Yeah, and it aligns so well with, because if you could say, well, because one place you could go is not run the company on 90-day, sort of on a 90-day schedule, right? And you say, well, we're just doing annual goals. Maybe you're not doing any goals, right? But that seems so, I don't know, 1990s or 80s or 70s or something like that. I don't know. But, I don't know how anybody can create an environment where everybody's marching together, focused, aligned, and thriving without checking in every 90 days, right? Without thinking about how did we just do over the last 90 days versus the goals we set for the 90 days. How are we doing in terms of our KPIs, right? How are we standing back and saying how are our processes, right? Thinking about whether it's the 6 key components that EOS has or the 9 core competencies that 9DOS has, right? Thinking through, all right, so how are we doing across the things that matter? And never doing it, right, is I don't know how people, I just don't know how people could run it. Doing that once a year, it's just so, right, it's just that's such a long period of time. So I don't know how you can't ultimately, if you really want to build a company that you enjoy running as opposed to start to feel like it's taking your life away, I don't know how you can march any longer than 90 days at a time, and I don't know how you cannot talk about how we just did, not only at the team level, but at the one-on-one level. So, that's ultimately the power of the system, is you cascade it all the way down so that everybody has, a 90-day conversation. We call it quarterly conversations, or a one-on-one, and they're talking about how things are going, and they feel like they're making progress, and they feel like they're heard, and they feel like the company's being open with them about what's going on and what's important. And anyway, so cascading down is, fundamentally, I think, getting everybody on the same page in terms of the things that matters, having core concepts that everybody understands, having core tools that everybody's using, the same tools, and of course having the core disciplines, weekly meetings, annual meetings, quarterly conversations, one-on-ones where appropriate, ultimately other things in process-wise like onboarding and things like that, and obviously, promotions and things like that. So that's the big idea. It's getting everybody on the same page so that ultimately, the vast majority of everybody says, I know what I'm supposed to be focused on. I'm aligned. I'm good. I think the rest of the organization's aligned with what I'm doing. And I love this, right? I really genuinely love doing the work I'm doing. If you get that done throughout the company, then, I think founders, CEOs will have businesses, companies that they genuinely, love. And I think that's a cool thing to strive for.
Yeah, that's an essential part in playing the long game, is making sure that, all of that is unified throughout. So
yeah. Anything else we should talk about in cascading?
I don't know. I think we hit a lot.
Yeah. The only thing that we didn't talk about is using a cloud-based, right, integrated system as opposed to, sort of paper-based. And the beauty, I think, of upgrading your operating system and then doing it, sort of in a cloud-based system is now everything's very explicit. We all know, we can go to it, we can see what the core values are, we can see what roles and responsibilities are, the structure, right? We can see the processes, we can see the KPIs, right? We can take a look at how we've been doing in meetings. We have a system for accountability in terms of to-dos. We have a system that makes it easier for us to only meet formally and avoid ad hoc meetings, which are a sign of a poorly run company. And because that's all in the cloud, right? Everybody has access to it. It's a system of record. It's a system of agreement, and the tools, when they're integrated really well, there's no redundancy of effort. So your quarterly conversation tool literally pulls information from the accountability chart or the org chart, right? It pulls information, the core values from the vision document. It pulls the to-do performance history from the meetings tool. It pulls the rocks from the planning tool, the goals tool, and then it pulls the best practices that you have around what it means to be a great leader at our company or a great coach at our company. And so it just gives you this system for ensuring that everybody's having the same conversations, that the information is there once, and you can access it when you need to access it without having multiple, the same information in multiple places, because then inevitably you got bad information somewhere. And so, once again, I think everybody should have a BOS. They should upgrade it. They should cascade it all the way down, and then they should take advantage of the technology that exists today, because it makes it, I know you don't like it when I say it, but it makes upgrading the BOS what?
Almost easy.
Almost easy.
But I think having the cloud-based system in terms of, right, like we talked about earlier in cascading, you have an issue of, right, you want to basically remove all those barriers.
Yeah.
Because if you are doing it, paper-based,
yeah,
cascading that seems very not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so being able to, bring people into a system that's already established, well thought out, and, give them time to explore and sort of figure it out, at their own pace is huge.
Right.
Because if you don't have that accessibility, there's just no way that you're going to be able to do that consistently and not have that just be someone's job,
right,
to just cascade it.
And the cool thing about a system like 90 is not just are all the tools and concepts and disciplines there, but all the training around why are core values important, right? Why are goals important, right? Why are KPIs important? Why are weekly meetings? What's a well-run weekly meeting look like, right? It's just like, if you want to learn why we do all the things that we're doing, you can do that on your own. You can obviously ask your team leader, but it just makes the whole learning and mastery process so much easier, right? As we say, we simplify the hard work of building a great organization.